Welcome back to UC Central Live. We're continuing the conversation about GIS organizations and the people in them. And so now we're going to move on to the topic of navigating your GIS career. Super important stuff. And for me, wildlife science and GIS always went hand in hand because we wanted to understand where these animals were living and what kind of space they needed. And mapping was the perfect way to do that. And so through learning more about GIS, I've been able to realize how useful it is in just about any field at all. So because of this, and because we have a great panel for you, I'd like to toss it right over to Dena Cross. Hey, Dena.
Hi, and thank you, Ray. I'm excited to be here today. I'm joined by a few of my talented colleagues here at Esri who've been on amazing career journeys. I'll start us off with a quick round of introductions. As Ray shared, I'm Dena Cross. I'm a senior consultant in professional services and work across industries. I lead our executive consulting community. Next, over to Yolanda, who's also joining remotely. Yolanda?
Hello, everybody. My name is Yolanda Richards, and I proudly serve as an account manager, specifically focused on local government to represent the city of Chicago and sister agencies. Thank you so much for having me.
And now to our live panelist, Ashley.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ashley Dew. I go by Dew, and I'm a product engineer for the Story Maps team.
And Hussein?
Hey everybody, my name is Hussein and I'm a principal engineer here in Esri, specifically in the development department and in the geodatabase team. Nice to meet you all.
Let's start our session today by diving into our individual stories, plus what we've learned along the way. Hopefully you'll take away some thoughts and advice that relates to your own career journey. But before we do so, we'd like to hear from you how you started in GIS. You'll see a poll pop up. It should only take you a minute. So as you're filling out the poll, I'll ask Yolanda to share her story first. Yolanda?
Sure. So I got involved in GIS in a very kind of non-traditional process. And so I was an undergrad, really not sure what I wanted to study and really major in. And so during that year, Hurricane Katrina actually took place. And so when Hurricane Katrina happened, it really rocked my world. It made me question so much in terms of what was going on with our built environment, people who had been displaced, really understanding how people are being impacted by a natural disaster. And so I couldn't stop thinking about Hurricane Katrina for a good year. And from that, I really wanted to make sure what I was going to study would really talk about the built environment and people and how they're being impacted by the built environment. And so I ended up finding a program called Urban Studies and Planning at the University of California in San Diego. And that was actually when I took my first GIS course. And so it was very important for me to understand how mapping can tell stories. I think at the same time, I've kind of had a unique experience within my career. I've worked in the education sector. I've worked in economic development, and all those different opportunities really emphasized how location is critical. And so I say that because I was always being followed when it came to issues related to mapping and technology and location. And so it was really great for me to have that be connected with working at Esri to really see how we can support agencies and organizations with their GIS technology and how they can solve critical problems in the world. And so that's how I got involved within the GIS space.
Wow, really exciting and so impactful. I'm excited to hear Hussein's story next.
Thanks, Dena. I suppose everything can be traced back to one's childhood. I showed earlier interest in computers and programming in the age of 15, 16, and then my uncle actually helped nourish that. And I completely took computer science, nothing related to GIS in terms of studies, but my uncle in Bahrain, that's the country I was born in and raised. He runs the Micro Center, which is a company that is an Esri distributor in Bahrain. And I worked for him back in 2004. And ever since, I've been in the GIS profession up until this day, moving from one company to a company. And my basic experience with GIS was always related to utilities. So I worked with Esri distributor in Bahrain and Esri distributor in Lebanon, specifically in Bahrain. So I moved across the Middle East implementing moving utilities from paper all the way to the GIS, Esri's GIS technologies. And I moved then to Ministry of Electricity on water in Bahrain, so help build their GIS infrastructure until Esri reached out, and I moved all the way from Bahrain, 8,000 miles to the United States back in 2015, and to build a product called Utility Network. So Esri reached out because I have this knowledge of the GIS utilities.
It's an amazing story. And now let's switch to Do. You too have a fascinating path.
So basically, my GIS journey was a coincidence. I was a journalism and a film major in college, and we were required to take 15 units outside of our major, and I ended up taking a GIS course. It was an incredible experience. I ended up making it my second major and leading me to work at National Geographic as an intern, and then traveling after as a travel blogger, and brought me to Esri.
Just really inspiring there. Let's take a peek now at how our poll results are looking. Can we bring that up briefly? All right, so we have now 58% saying they studied GIS in college. That's by far more than double the next response, which is where people started by working in GIS. Really fascinating. So those numbers are rising. And speaking of rising, let's move on to thoughts about growing your career. Can you start by sharing a few ideas?
Definitely, yeah. So as everybody else, I faced my share of struggles when applying to jobs and trying to grow my careers early, that I'm speaking like mid-2000s, late 2000s, and submitting resumes and getting rejected until a friend of mine named Andrew Zolnai, shout out if he's watching this live, he gave me a very wonderful advice that I took to heart. And he said, Hussein, why are you, instead of submitting resumes to reach companies, why don't you flip the equation and let the companies or these organizations reach you instead? Obviously, I didn't understand what he said, didn't make sense. But when he explained, I said, okay, you have knowledge, you acquire these few years of knowledge. Why don't you share this very simply, smoothly through blogs or videos or any medium that you're comfortable with? And that was back in 2009. So I started a blog. And I started writing about what I know. I started writing about technology here in Esri called ArcGIS Server. That's the first blog I wrote, I believe. And I didn't think much about it, so I started writing a lot of blogs. And behold, someone from the UK, a publisher, reached out and said, Hussein, it looks like you know a thing or two about this technology. Would you like to write a book? So I said, first of all, I said, obviously, no. What do I know about writing books? I don't know anything. But my wife, love you, thank you so much, she actually pushed me to go ahead and just do it. So I wrote my first book, and followed by another one and another one. And I have now 5 books and talking about ArcGIS technologies. And that's how basically Esri reached out, and I got hired as a result.
Well, I'm hearing you say that career growth, people finding you, and then building on your influence,
100%.
Maybe in non-traditional ways. I'd like to pivot now to Do for some practical advice. Can you please share what's been just a key factor in your career journey?
Yeah, what's been so important to me in my career and in my life is building relationships with people, just understanding, other people's paths and journeys, how they all intersect, and that we have our own ways to go through it. It's really exciting to just meet people and understand, all walks of life.
And then Yolanda, you have some perspective on this as well, and then also how you can apply your passion and the essence of who you are into your career. How did you do this?
Yeah, I think, just hearing from the other panelists, Do said it beautifully, just relationship building is so important. I think it's always important to recognize that there is a space for everybody in GIS. I think what we're trying to do is really change the narrative about traditional models of how people can utilize GIS. You think about Du and her background as a theater major. We're currently working with the Chicago Park District to highlight artists and their skill sets when it pertains to finding local art in the Chicago area and looking at that from an equity issue. So artists are actually using GIS technology to find ways in which you can express art and tourism in the city. So that is a perfect example of how GIS can be for anyone. I think if you're able to apply the technology but address the issues or the challenges or the problems that you're trying to solve, and there's a locational component to it, I can't emphasize more and more enough how there is a space for everyone within the GIS space. One of the areas that I'm deeply passionate about is racial justice. And so it's not surprising that I see that in education in Chicago, in economic development, and now working for the city of Chicago to really address how equity is really an issue and a challenge. That's something that I think is so important. And you're able to show your passion and be authentic in your process and making sure that people can really look at GIS and how it's able to address a lot of these challenges that we face. And so my big thing has been to really emphasize to people that there is a space for you in this field. You just want to show up with passion, know what the issue is from a locational perspective, and go hard. Seriously, that's the basic way that I would tell people. Just go hard in your approach and show that passion.
Yeah.
100%.
I love it. I mean, thank you, all of you. GIS is exploding, and I hope you all heard today there are many paths. There are many ways to parlay your passion into your work. I mean, in GIS for me and others, you, at any time in your career, can change that trajectory. Like we say, the world's become more complex, and we can use that power. Yolanda, I just love your springboarding from a tragic situation like Hurricane Katrina. And then Du with your travels and starting a blog. And then, of course, Hussein exploding with your many followers on your YouTube channel and elsewhere. I would encourage anyone, again, just think about your career growth. I've come full circle. It's not just an upward climb through titles, but you can expand your impact anywhere at any level. So with that, we're going to close. Thank you, panelists. You have been great. This has been a great and just insightful discussion.